It's great to be with you. Thank you for letting me get out of Washington. It's a thrill a minute up there, you know. But we know what our job is, and you know what your job is, and I don't think there's any disagreement or confusion about it. We know how important state and local law enforcement is, how important our chiefs are, and our ACP, how important it is. And we get everybody working together, we're going to bring crime down. We're going to make this country safer, communities safer, and we're going to start seeing some reduction in deaths from opioids and homicides and violent crime. Often beginning to see a little bit of it now. Tim, thank you for your introduction and your 3 decades of service to Missouri, and I know you've worked, as so many in this room have, to make your community safer and do the job that we're supposed to do. IACP is a great organization. Appreciate them for you assemble and lead and work with more than 30,000 chiefs of police from 150 countries. That is a remarkable thing, and you provide good information. The leadership does, and I believe that it is a key factor in successes we've had over the last 30 years in reducing crime. Better policing is so much of the key to it. Lou Deckmar, neighbor in Georgia, had a great visit with him, I guess, 2 weeks ago, and appreciate that, and met with the IACP board in D.C. just to discuss the fundamental issues that we face, all of us together. I want to thank you for that work you've faithfully done for 125 years. I didn't realize that you had been around that long, so maybe another 125 years. Some of you might live to see that, I'm sure I won't. But more sophisticated, effective policing makes America safer every day. You know, I'm well aware when the president sent us a executive order. Well, actually, he sent 3. The first one was back the men and women in blue. Basically, that's how we summarize it. And that's what we believe in. He also sent us an order, which can be pretty clear sometimes: reduce crime in America. Not to just preside over and excuse ever increasing crime and death rates and homicides, but to actually reduce crime in America. So that's our message. That's what we want to do. A third one dealt with transnational criminal organizations, which impact crime in our communities, but also have international impact. So that's what we're doing, and we know we cannot achieve those goals without your support. We know that you can't reduce crime in America if you aren't working with the 85% who do the work every day, who are out there in the streets, on the streets, know what's happening. So we are well aware of our bond, our need to be partners with you. I'm pleased to see my home state is represented here. Adrian Bramlett, Executive Manager of the Alabama Association. Is Adrian here? There he is. Good for you. We're glad the Alabama Association of Chiefs of Police. David Carpenter of Daphne, which is one of these great Mobile Bay retirement homes. Y'all got high cotton people on this board, I got to tell you. And one of the top retirement spots. And Ted Cook of Mountain Brook, that's the most elite subdivision in the world. Just about, they think it is anyway. It's a good town. Mountain Brook is. They all want to see if they can get in Mountain Brook. It's not always good for a politician. They run against you. He doesn't understand Alabama. He's from Mountain Brook, you know. But I appreciate that. And speaking of Cook, where is Steve Cook? Is Steve here? I saw him. Where was my man Steve Cook? Steve Cook ran out on me. He was just right there. Steve, as you know, a long time, well, he started out as a police officer and long-time assistant United States attorney in Eastern Tennessee. And one of the great guys. He was head of the Tennessee Assistant United States, the nation's Assistant United States Attorneys Association, a line prosecutor, and he'd been such an ally to me. So had been unfilled, the Department of Justice liaison office, which is supposed to coordinate with local police and law enforcement. So he's just been a perfect fit. I know IACP works with Steve regularly, and he's just a pro, and it's really been an asset to me to make sure we're listening to what you do. So President Trump, he's made clear, and I support law enforcement. We always will. We know that whose side we're on. It's not the criminals, by the way. We're on the side of law and order, stability and public safety. This is an administration that believes in listening to you and understanding what's going on in the real world. We understand the risk your officers take, the tools you need to be effective. The most important thing that any government can do is to keep its citizens safe, and that's what you work at every single day. You are the thin blue line that stands between the law-abiding and the criminals, between sanctity and lawlessness, and we need to understand that. I know the importance of the work that you do. I prosecuted in a small United States Attorney's Office and Attorney General for a couple of years in Alabama. I know the dangers and the challenges and frustrations and the satisfactions that go with a good law enforcement. So during my nearly 40 years of being in and around law enforcement, I've come to understand that we have to see the criminal justice system as one whole, and we need to think about it that way. It starts with our police officers making the arrest on the street, our police chiefs who lead them, the sheriffs and their deputies. Then you state law enforcement, our state forensics departments, our local and state prosecutors, the judges, the juries, the probation, the parole officers. All of it is a big system. But the challenge we face is it's so, I almost said messed up. It's messed up in a lot of ways. If you think about it, if you had to run a business to try to make America safer and you want to spend a lot of money on it, I don't think you'd have quite so many competing things. But that's our history. It's not going to change. We're not challenging this system. We just have to work with it. We have different roles, different laws, different lines on jurisdictional lines, different authorities, different funding sources. Some answer to the city council, the state, the county. But we have to be united in the effort, one effort, and work together. We need partners, not sanctuary cities, frankly. That's what we need. We need partnership, all of us do, to work together. I am convinced the increased training, professionalism, leadership, and more effective law enforcement policies of our police departments nationwide over several decades has been the critical factor in reversing the dramatic rise in crime that we saw through the 60s and 70s. Hardly any man is now alive, said Paul Revere, wasn't it? That he remembers that time, but I remember it because I was a young assistant United States attorney in the late 70s. Crime had been going up for 20 years, and it took us a number of years of more sophisticated, determined prosecuting and policing to begin to turn the tide, and crime started dropping for 30 years, basically. Some ups and downs, but basically the rising crime ended. IACP and the leadership and training and advanced thinking that you've brought to bear on these issues is a big part of that. But it happened all over the country, and I know how that happened. We saw homicide rates fall by 1/2 what they were when Ronald Reagan made me United States Attorney in 1981. I've not forgotten that. drug use by young people, high school seniors, fell by almost a half from that date. The violent crime fell dramatically. It was an achievement that few at that time, after so many years of increasing crime, would have thought impossible. Children were raised in better environments than they would have been. Fewer parents are addicted and dying. College degrees were obtained that may not have been obtained if they'd become addicted, and careers were advanced. It has a social and cultural and human benefit to reduce drug addiction and death and crime. It just does. What you do is important. Maybe we got overconfident, took our eye off the ball, but more recent trends have been worrisome. The violent crime rate went up by nearly 7% after years of decline in 15, and 16. Robberies went up. Assaults went up nearly 10%. Rape went up nearly 11%. And homicides shot up by more than 20% in 15 and 16 alone. That's a trend that we don't like. It's not a good trend. We're not going to allow the trends to continue. We're not going to give away the things that you and the advances you and your officers have made over the last 30 years. No one should feel like a prisoner in their home. No child should fear going to school or walking the streets of their neighborhoods. I met with the parents of the two young 16-year-old girls from Islip, New York. Their parents were later invited to the State of the Union by President Trump. They said in their neighborhood, parents take turns standing at the bus stop now with their children because they're afraid for their safety till the bus picks them up. One of them said they even have a wing in the high school called the MS-13 wing. Well, this is horrible. We cannot allow that to happen in our country. We're not going to allow it to happen in our country. So that's why this administration, this Department of Justice, is taking action to protect this country and disarm criminals. In recent weeks, the President held a series of roundtables, including with the law enforcement leaders. So have I, and we have listened to you, and we hear you. I don't think it's complicated. It's just a lot to do. It makes us better in federal law enforcement when we are working with you. My experience is that when you listen to the experts, the people who are doing this every day, you can usually learn something, how to be better about it. So last week, we had about 30 people in my office for a conference, each representing officers with all the major law enforcement groups, including IACP. And the week before that, we met with IACP's team. The discussion began to revolve around the problem of individuals who are mentally ill or particularly dangerous, and how are we going to handle these cases? What do you do when you identify somebody that you're concerned about, their family is concerned about, their neighbors are concerned about, their teachers are concerned about? We've got to finally make progress on this seemingly long-term, impractical problem. Local communities supported by the federal government have to have a system that actually delivers valuable information. We get that information out with some, I think, involuntary commitment options for those who are mentally ill and who are dangerous and can be shown to be dangerous. Some of these people need to be in treatment facilities and not in jails. So we need to break down the walls also that exist between all the various different law enforcement and social service agencies. We learned after 9/11, I was there then, and we went in, dug into the CIA and the FBI and the walls of intelligence and how we were not availing ourselves of threats that were out there. And it led to 9/11. I'm hopeful we'll remember that lesson now in the wake of the terrible tragedy in Florida. No doubt about it. Law enforcement cooperation, sharing information saves lives. And I don't think there's any doubt about it. Since the Parkland shooting, President Trump's administration, and he has actually pushed personally for action, not just talk, to strengthen law enforcement, make this country safer from the threat of guns and violence, and things are beginning to move. The Department of Justice has provided $1 million in emergency funding to Broward County for the extra dramatic work they've had to do and overtime. At the President's direction, we've begun the process of banning bump stocks, which in effect turn legal guns into illegal machine guns. We've been working on that, but the President said, get busy. We got busy. All of a sudden, we got it done. You know, that's a complicated matter, actually, but we're confident we've got a good solution to this, and we're going to make it happen. The Department's also providing additional funding for cities and states to hire school resource officers, and those can be done, you know, through the COPS program and other programs. Every year we help hire hundreds of police officers across America through that program. It's one of the most important things, I guess, we do for many of you. Now we're targeting grant funding to cities and states that want to put officers in the schools. I've also ordered our prosecutors to more aggressively charge those who lie on the background checks when they go to buy a gun and try to get one illegally when they're not entitled to. Under my tenure as Attorney General, we've already increased federal gun prosecutions to a 10-year high, and violent crime prosecutions are up at a 25-year high. We're just getting started on that. I think we can do more. United States attorneys here in Tennessee and around the country are just been eager to be unleashed, and the prosecutors are ready to go to work, and hopefully we can be a real good partner for you. We intend to break those kind of prosecutorial records again. I got to say, in the last 4 or 5 years, federal prison population dropped from 220,000 to 180,000. That is really big. I mean, it's a factor, I think, in crime in our country. We've got some space to put some people, I got to say to you. Also, the sentences have dropped. Now, I think our judges need to be more careful about this. We've sent a message to our prosecutors that you should normally charge the most serious offense, and unless your United States attorney agrees with you that you shouldn't. We don't micromanage it, but we say you should normally go after the criminals with the most serious offense they committed, and if that carries a mandatory minimum, that's why Congress passed it. Why else did they put the darn thing in the law? I think that's a good step in the right direction, and we need to reverse a trend that suggested that criminals won't be confronted seriously with their crime. But the background check system that we have for gun purchase today is only as good as the information we put in the system. So that's why we're holding accountable our federal agencies, and I've written to them about it, and we're asking our cities and states to provide us with the information we need to know if someone's not qualified and shouldn't have a gun. I have ordered the FBI to identify the cities and states that fail to give us information. I don't know that there's many that just don't give any, but you can look at the charts, the printouts of the numbers, and you see a lot of states and a lot of areas are not submitting final dispositions. They'll say arrest maybe, but somehow the final court, and you don't deny a gun on an arrest, you deny a gun based on conviction. So we've got to get those convictions up. There's still a lot of that happening. And I think we can improve it. We'll have some money to help our local jurisdictions do better. One problem we face all too often is that the FBI does not get all the information it needs. We're going to help the states with that process. We'll have some funding, especially domestic violence. Convictions are often not getting in the system when they should. Also, we're going to work harder to get adjudications, dispositions of mental illness situations where they've been determined to be incompetent or dangerous. Those are not always, I'm not sure the judges and all who handle those cases know and are always putting that in the system. But some of these people can be very dangerous, and we need to get that in. We'll improve the ways we use information we do get, including tips from the public. We've FBI, our new FBI director, Chris Ray, good guy and a very talented leader, is acting on that. I've directed him to, let's get to the bottom of that, but he's already working on it. And we're going to make sure that we respond effectively and quickly to any kind of tip information that comes in through our systems. Indeed, the day after the Florida matter was discussed, Chris Ray sent a new deputy FBI director, Dave Bowditch, out to Clarksburg, West Virginia, and they've already done a top-to-bottom review of that system. The bottom line is this: we're not going to stand by and let violent crime increase. Plain and simple, we will not allow the progress made by your officers over the past 2 decades to simply slip through our fingers. We will protect the poor as well as the rich. We will not cede one community, one block, one street corner to violent thugs, drug dealers, or MS-13. One of our explicit goals for 2018 is to reduce crime in America. We think we may have had a decline in 2017 after 2 significant years of increases in overall violent crime, just a little bit. We want to continue those numbers down. We've been pursuing that with you aggressively. Last year, we secured the convictions of nearly 500 human traffickers, 1,200 gang members. We helped our international allies arrest or charge more than 4,000 MS-13 members, based primarily in El Salvador. I went there. The people in El Salvador are really concerned about it. And they really proudly returned several, I think it was 700 indictments when we went there. And they were sending a signal to us and to their own area that they're pushing back too. So these are accomplishments that benefit us all. And while I have inexpressible pride in our fabulous federal officers, I am fully aware that you represent the vast majority, your state and local and tribal officials, the vast majority of law enforcement officers. We cannot succeed without you. So we want to be a force multiplier for you. We can reach defendants you can't reach across state lines, across our national borders, across oceans. We have that capability. We've got 90 FBI offices worldwide. We have 600 DEA agents placed in key drug area production areas around the globe. We can provide you with expertise and intelligence that help you identify a case that you believe is significant and that can continue on back and maybe ripen into a major case against a cartel. Seize maybe a lot of money. By the way, I think they're trying to curtail our forfeiture law right this very minute in Washington. I don't know whether they passed that appropriations bill or not, but I don't know why they worry about sharing of assets between federal and state officers. They want to end the adoption policy, which is the adoption basically of the holder policy that I reversed. If a local police officer stops somebody and has probable cause to seize $50,000 in cash in their car because it's product of drug dealing, and it meets the federal standards, it doesn't make any difference whether it's a federal officer testifying in court or a state officer in court. We do that all the time. This was something I did as United States Attorney. So it's tried before a federal judge. You know, I mean, that's due process. And we changed the law, and one time I dealt with Senator Schumer on that. We raised the proof level to probable cause. We said if the federal government loses the case, we have to pay the defense lawyers' cost of litigation, and I've directed excellent Assistant United States Attorney from North Carolina to come to Washington and review our entire system. If there's any problems, to him to let me know personally. But we don't think there's any real problems in federal system now. We're careful about that. People have the right to take their case to court. 80% of the DEA forfeitures, many of these are adoptive forfeitures, are not even contested by the person for whom it was the money or assets were taken. You know, the lawyer said, well, do you want to add perjury to your charge? I mean, they used to say, we got it gambling. You ever heard them say that? Well, I won this money gambling. But now they all write, they keep a record of who won gambling. You just say, what casino did you go to, you know? Well, they don't have any record of you winning $100,000. When were you there? What hotel did you stay in? This is kind of dead-end thing for somebody that's trying to defend $100,000 in his car from drug dealing. So that's why we've been successful. And often it's very much a partnership relationship between federal and state. It helps bind us together. I've always liked it. I hope we don't lose that. They're not challenging actual task force forfeitures. Well, I'm also pleased how much IACP has worked with us on the Collaborative Reform Technical Assistance Center. That's a good name. It'll provide training, advice, and expertise for law officers across America. This Technical Assistance Center is in good hands. I want to thank the IACP for their leadership and for bringing together an impressive coalition of law enforcement leaders and experts, including the FOP, Major Cities Chiefs, FBI National Academy, International Association of Campus Law Enforcement, International Association of Directors of Law Enforcement Training and Standards, National Association of Women Law Enforcement Executives, National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Noble Executives. I'll be with Noble in Birmingham next week. And I appreciate the work they do. So this new model puts law enforcement agencies in the driver's seat and provides support, resources, and assistance by using this by the field, for the field model. It fulfills my pledge to respect local accountability and control while delivering tailored technical assistance. I think it's a good plan. It will be a great benefit to actual officers in the field to help improve public safety, prevent crime, help law officers be safe for both all of our law enforcement communities. So we intend to continue to invest in you. Let me say, I believe firmly we want your officers, to the newest rookie, to believe that what we do will make a difference. It cannot be, I used to call it the Hill Street Blues thing. You know, they'd go in and they'd arrest them, they'd take them in, the judge would let them go, but they were just professional guys. They'd go out and arrest them again, and it seemed like nothing ever happened. The trends were negative. The mentality was negative. We need to have a mentality that what we do makes a difference. We can create excitement, motivate our young officers. We believe crime rate does not go up like the tides that rise and fall without impact from law enforcement. We believe we can impact crime in America. I know we can. Good law enforcement does that. So we'll build on the strong leadership that you are providing and police chiefs all over America are providing. A lot of the thinking and talking heads and media experts have no idea how many years of work, effort, training, and study has gone into the policies of policing that are occurring in our cities and states all over this country. How hard you work to make sure that not one of your officers violates the rights of the citizens they're out there dealing with. How hard you work. But when you got hundreds of officers in a department, every now and then somebody will make a mistake. If we have to, we'll bring a civil rights case I know you'll bring disciplinary action. We will not allow that. But I'm telling you, it is underappreciated how much we've learned and how effective we're being. Proactive policing works. It's one of the big changes that's happened over the decades since I started in law enforcement. So let me close by reiterating my deep appreciation to all the men and women in law enforcement, federal, state, local, tribal. I want to thank every chief of police in America, as well as our international partners. The work you do, that you have dedicated your lives to, is essential. I believe it. The Department of Justice believes it, and President Trump believes it. You can be certain about this. We have your back. You have our thanks. Thank you all. God bless you.